see what's what. So it should be recording. I think it is. So yeah, in this session, Jack, what we're doing is, as you know, focusing on context and research, seeing how the project's going, your final project, and discussing any issues and trying to give you pointers to support it, basically. How do you think the project's going at this moment in time?
I think it's going well.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think isn't going well is that I wish I put a bit more work in over Easter break.
Okay. Yeah.
I did. What I mostly did was I went over the old models I made.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are like tweaked and improved.
Okay.
Because looking back at it, I didn't like it as much anymore.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I did more like website work.
Okay. So that's fine. And we still got, like I say, over weeks, including today, to address that. So if you've had a bit of a break, which is what Easter's for, then the important thing is that you're recognizing that you need to get back on it, and hopefully we'll see that progress in response to that. You've self-assessed at a pass for both context and research at the moment, you feel like, and you have primary research, you said, in the form of a survey. Got some books and magazines as sources, and you've also got some stuff on your bibliography there. We'd expect a bit more by now. Slightly more primary research and sound design research. So what primary research do you think you would do next? How?
I can't really think of anything that I could like. I don't think there's really anything that I can go see.
Okay.
So I feel like I might do like a different survey, but I might do it where you send it out to like more people.
Yeah. Okay.
Like make it more like a more public sort of one.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I right? How well that would land?
Yeah, well, we can. When we have a look at what we've got, we'll see. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything other than obviously we talked about the idea of going to see like boats and things, but maybe that's not relevant now. Right, we've got to do the thing of checking where things are. So whilst we were talking, then I was scanning what we have and haven't got. We need the project proposal on the homepage, Jack. That's your first thing. So you kind of, as an action list, of to-do list off of the back of this, that's your first, most important thing, really. That's your brief. So if it exists on your website somewhere else, then it needs to duplicate there, or if it doesn't exist anywhere on here, it needs to be added there, okay? Which it doesn't look like it does. Secondly, as you rightly said, you've got some bibliography sources, but not enough, and they should really be Harvard linked to where they apply in the sources. So we need more of that, basically.
Yeah. I've got more in a Word document. I just haven't put them on yet.
Okay. So do that then. And then the next thing is in your evaluation page. You've got your pitch video, but you've got no reflection on what was said there and what you were going to action in response to that. So, and also how you felt like that performance went in terms of your pitch, how the process as a piece went. Okay, so that needs to go there. And then, as well as that, the pitch material, as in the PowerPoint that you showcased in that, does that exist on here? Research? No, so that's an easy win as well, because there's a lot of work that went into that. So add that. All right. So it's not to like, I don't want you like dipping your head going, oh shit, that's. But equally, it's like these are easy things that must be there, because like, why would you not? You know what I mean? And essentially, it's you actually have to have your project proposal there. So, right, that's your kind of really easy tick list of things to do, which I reckon you could go down and do this afternoon before you depart today to get all of those things actioned, plus more besides it. So we've got our SWOT analysis, and we've got the airship. Then it goes into some airship research. We've got the things like this, right, where we've got the activity. You've marked previous students' work, but from a point of view, I know what's happened here. From a point of view of an external assessor, we don't really know what's happening with what this is even, or B, know what you're taking from that activity. So that's the sort of thing where, again, you want to try to give yourself the best opportunity to push your grades beyond the pass level. And in doing that, you have to sort of show the idea of the basic level, sufficient relevant information gathered, documented, and used in the development of ideas. Now, that process doesn't at the moment tell me that you've used anything in the development of your ideas. However, I know that you were like looking at examples of previous people's projects there, and then going, oh, I quite like the way that they did this, or I like the presentation of that. And some of that's directly influencing the look of your website now. So that's key information that's not there at the moment that you can't get credited for. That then means that you're, potentially not even passing in just this one, it might feel like a harsh thing, but in this one example, that might as well not be there because it doesn't tell me anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a worthwhile activity that you've done, and that you talked with Madison. You came up with some good justification for your decisions, but there's not the evidence there. Okay.
Yeah, so basically, by that, I just have to just more state what I've done.
Yeah. Just imagine that you come to this site, you have to put a different sort of headset on in terms of who. You come over here, you've never seen this before. It says pass website evaluation. Yeah, you can join up the dots and say, probably guess what's happened here, but it shouldn't be that. It should be in this, a little descriptor after this. This was an activity that we all completed as a group. It was the process. What it was designed to do was to showcase the grading criteria and the fact that we now have 3 more criteria than we did last year, including problem solving, planning, production, practical, and presentation. What I took from it was that I felt like we did quite a good job coming up with justification, and the tutor agreed with us on the grade allocations that we came up with. Great. More importantly, in terms of what it did for your project, maybe it was what I saw that was really a common theme in the distinctive examples was that the websites looked very professional, that they showcased this, that everything was subheadings and clear formatting of which I've done in all my previous projects. And then, do you know what I mean? It just that's all it needs, which is a meaty paragraph that gives us that information. Yeah. So anything like that where you think, actually, look, when you read it back, what's the reason for that being here? Here we go straight into airship research. Maybe before that we have something that says one of my thought processes, that you talked about in your pitch was, so this is maybe where the pitch should come before here. And that you then say, when putting the pitch material together, I landed on the idea of wanting to do an interior, or to look at an airship as a kind of early idea. I looked at, actually, you talked to me about the idea of nautical themes in general, and then it evolved into an airship, didn't it?
Yeah.
So all of that kind of evolution of your thinking is lost before here. So if we have the pitch and then maybe something that alludes to the different ideas that you had, and then we go into airships, I get a better sense of Jack's thought about this. He's kind of responding to this idea. He's evolving this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's lost evidence here that just kind of goes, bam, here's what a Zeppelin is. So why has that happened? So put your pitch in here. Maybe even you could duplicate the feedback that you're going to add to your pitch, and then say off the back of that, here's my own research, and then here we go. Yeah, does that make sense? So again, with anything like this, what you want to think about is, so why have you included this? So this bit lacks the extra bit where it's from this research, you said to me quite adamantly that you don't actually want it to look like a modern blimp. You're not really into the idea of these just great big hulking white blobs, and you want it to have that kind of steampunky or sort of retro feel, which is more similar to things that we see in BioShock Infinite or in Guns of Icarus or whatever franchises that exist already. And then we get a greater sense of the fact that you're looking at historic ship design and boat building and all these sort of nautical things that cross over in this weird sort of fantasy hybrid activity that we're seeing. Yeah. One thing that I remember you showed me in your pitch, there was a really key image in your pitch documentation, which was a kind of a retro stylized airship that you were like, oh, that's that. I really like the style of this one. That should be prominently on here with a bit more analysis of stained glass windows, wooden cladding, do you know what I mean? And ropes and all the things that are going to be material wise that are going into your design. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want to and it feels like at the moment I'm going, oh, this is, do this, do that, yeah. But it should be that this process is to help you, to give you more to talk to get to grips with. Okay. Is there anything else that you think having me said that, do you feel like that that there's more things you could add more depth to, or is it that you struggle to do that, or what?
What I seem to struggle with is to think of it from an outside perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously most of the time I'm just looking at it and sort of I already know what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, with what you said about having to basically sort of explain everything,
Yeah.
that's mainly where I would struggle from.
Yeah. Okay. So then try and break it down. And again, that may be, I've said about this before to other people, but where AI might help as a prompting tool, not to write it for you, but it's like if you was to say, I'm designing, give it the prompts of like what the background of what you're covering in your project. So I'm, as a student, a games development student, developing a project around an airship. I'm wanting to talk about the function of airships, and then show how that informs what I do. The key thing here is, right, when we look at the grading criteria, this bit where it's like used to inform the development of ideas, and what we want to do is like to get into the next level, which is interpret the information, filter. That means that synthesis means like filter, basically, to take out, get rid of the stuff that's irrelevant, cut that out, and just really focus on what's relevant to your project. So you presented me in this example here with a lot of sciencey stuff around how airships function. Pilots navigate using rudders. Since the most delivered buoyancy, great. Airships are primarily utilized as an aerial filming, advertising, etc. So I've got that. What I don't have is how you're using that information to inform what you go on to do.
Yeah.
So at this stage, you might not know because you're still in the early ideas phase, but it might be you. What I would expect to see there is like how you allude to what it might do. So where this proportion of the ship is dedicated to the actual being the manned or personnel section of the ship where people actually operate it from is tiny in proportion to the actual buoyancy part of it, right? The aviation element, the bit that keeps it up in the air. Yeah. That might be something that you're like, well, actually, look, this is another reason why I don't really like the form of modern actual scientifically functioning blimps. My idea is that I want to give a greater proportion to the deck and make it look more boat-like, so that it feels more like a galleon, in which case with boats it's kind of the inverse, where the underneath bit is the bit that makes it float in the water, and the only tiny bit that you see on the surface is like a small proportion of the boat, right? So that might be a nice kind of contrast. But then I get a sense of, well, look, Jack's thinking about this, so he's actually changing the design. And then if we had some, like, and again, I think this would be a missed opportunity if you don't look at this franchise, because they might not be, it might not be a game you play or really have a, like, you don't like the art style, but it's still like a game that's based around airships. So there's a lot of like variety in the way that they approach them. These, I mean, if you were to liken it to other vessels, like this thing here looks way more like a submarine, I think, does to me. That would be my take on this one, that it's got these kind of things that it almost looks like it's level on the top with a fin on the top, right? And then we've got really kind of quite boxy geometry, which if I was likening that to like a modern vehicle, I would say this looks more like German in the style of, like, if it was tanks. Do you know what I mean? It looks the grey straight away. My thing makes me think of it as like a German sort of Panzer tank or something like that in my association with it, versus like the more seahorsey looking things that look more like more animal inspired, I suppose, just because of the fact that the sails are like fins and things. And that's just my take on it. But I've given you a take on something that I've analysed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what are you taking from it? And these silhouettes are really nice. Like, that's a really nice way to approach the design of the outside of the thing. I know yours is really focused on the deck and the actual interior of the shape, but there's lots to be taken from some analysis of these examples where the approach is really different, where like a huge proportion of these is all about like sails and what looks like aerodynamic consideration, a way more kind of flamboyant approach. And again, this thing, like, relatively compared to the actual scientific examples you provided, which, I mean, if you look at this from a critical point of view, of like a sciencey point of view, this probably doesn't look like it would actually float. The actual proportion of this balloon is really small, right? Then the deck looks like it would outweigh it, but we don't need to get bogged down with that. We still look at that and read how it works, and we don't really know what all these gears and things do, but we can see like exposed kind of decks and below deck areas and stuff like that, which we could talk about. And then this thing looks like it's providing thrust because it's got like a propeller. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of insight that I think we really want to see a bit more, or I want to hear like what you're taking from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Teardrop envelope designs, reduced aerodynamic.
I did that there because I wanted to like.
So this is good, yeah. More modern airships utilize lightweight. So again, this might then look nice, like then comparing to like material swatches or something, because you're going to be texturing it. So you can say, oh look, I want mine to feel more light. So maybe the types of fabric that you use, that like when it comes to the sails, they should look like silks or something, and then versus like more like flat kite-like sort of structures with tails billowing off them or something to imply that they're very lightweight, you know, versus like heavy sort of tarpaulin sort of style boat sails. And like sounds good, but again, like if we could maybe get some annotated images or some like kind of these sort of pictures where we get different things and label them up would be good, or like that would be helpful. Does that make sense?
Just make it more like visual.
Yeah, and keep telling me like what it is that you're taking, like how you interpret this and what you're taking to your designs. I know what they got for this stuff. Yeah, just
steampunk to get like an idea
for good.
Which one I want to do.
Yeah, cool. And again, like the sort of in summary, hopefully we hear like what it is that you're taking from it and the style of that. Interior room design, great. This is good. And again, I think the more variety you can get here, the better. So it can be really, like I said to you before in the pitch, it could be really obscure sources. Like it could be films. Like, you watch a film like a more accurate film like Master and Commander, like a Russell Crowe thing, versus like Peter Pan and Hook or whatever. And you can get different styles and different sort of approaches, and it will give you more inspiration, more ideas. And then sound design, I guess we're talking about like ambient air, wind, and things like that. So there is, I would say that the research is relevant. Whether or not at the moment that we've got the evidence there that it informs the idea. So how we don't see the connection with the idea until we start to see you make it, and hopefully then you can do a further job of like tying back to the research and sort of showcasing it. Yeah. But it does feel like it's stagnated a little bit since the pitch. There's not as much happened here as it should have happened, like you said. So you've admitted that you had took it easy over Easter, but you've got to really get back on it now, Jack, to get this back into kind of line with where it should be. Oh, the picture's here. Okay. Well, the video was here, but the reflection wasn't. The picture. Yeah. So put the picture material over onto the context and research page. Okay. And then this is doubling up now because we've already got that there, but I still need a reflection on this one. And then after today, so we've got some time management stuff here. We've got a block out of this. Good. And then we really need to get things go. So from your like analysis of the ship, of the design, we need some things like some basic design processes. So some silhouette sketch work. We need some asset lists coming from it. We need kind of like, again, if you're working on the deck and the cabin quarters and so forth, like maybe a bit of a map of like that, kind of a floor plan of what's going to be made, etc. Yeah. And then evolving that. I do think it would be good to have some more analysis of some examples of airships and other games that deal with that, like BioShock Infinite is a really kind of good. The floating city sort of theme is similar visually to some of the styles that you've referenced before. I don't know if there's actual airships in there. I feel like there is, but I might be wrong. But if not, there's like definitely even things like the accessories in that. The skyhook that they use to navigate around is like a really nice like weapon like slash utility tool that they, is all sort of inspired by that process. So does that help? Do you feel like you've got enough to be going along with to get on the back of this? Yeah. I think, as I say, everything you've got in here looks good, but there needs to be all those things that we've just discussed and covered, and with more emphasis on your analysis. I think in terms of primary research, it could be just going and photographing materials and samples. As you get into texturing, maybe it's like you're looking at different types of stitches, or you could, the things that you have in the captain's quarters, like looking at different types of knots. You go to these sort of old style pubs even, where you've got like just weird trinkets that are on the wall and stuff. That feels like it would be more in keeping visually with the themes, like the way that maybe the captain's quarters would be that you showed on here. And so it's like, well, what sort of odd paraphernalia, like what we talked about, nautical paraphernalia in general the other day, didn't we? Where it's like things like the globe that you'd have in there, things for mapping like sextants and different compasses and things like that you would have, and spy looking glasses and telescopes and all these sorts of things that you might want to incorporate. So there's lots to add here and lots to do, and then obviously we've got to really get to grips with practical, because 5 weeks will fly by. So we've got to start making and really chucking a lot of effort into that. So I would suggest that putting a bit more time. You did a good job before the pitch. You really sort of dug in and put a lot of time in, started notably putting time in outside of college to get that to a position where it was quite a strong pitch. But then it feels like you've kind of coasted a little bit. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, no, that's true.
So we need to get back on the horse and all those analogies, so we get it back into where it should be. Okay? Right. I think I've given you enough to get going with there. So key things there: proposal on the homepage, video reflection of the pitch. Today's one added and reflected on. Then go back in, add the bits of descriptive work to all the research posts that exist already to say what you're taking from it and why. No post should be on there that kind of hasn't essentially got a clarified purpose of what you're taking from it. If it's there, you should either scrap it or add that, which is, the latter is the more recommended approach. And then add the things that we've discussed. So looking at Guns of Icarus, looking at airships, looking at just general sort of styles and materials and all those things that are going to enrich the project, and then really start to get to grips of making. Okay, cool. Let's stop recording.